Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Providing Traveler Value as Tourism Reopens. I think we've probably got a few people coming in. There's a few more coming in. So in the interest of time, and I'm hoping there will be some great discussion today, I'm going to get this started. Before we begin, I'd like to cover off a few housekeeping issues. Today's webinar is being recorded, as you heard, and it will be available on our industry website, that is tourismtalk.ca. Please feel free to revisit the content yourself and share it with your colleagues or operators. We also invite your comments and questions, so please look to the QA chat box on the right side of your screen in the control panel. If you think of a question for our speakers at any point, please type it in there and we will address it as we move through the presentation. We have a few polls today in the presentation as well, so you will see some questions pop up on your screen, and we'd love your feedback and your answers. And finally, following today's webinar, you will receive a brief survey in your inbox, and we kindly ask you to provide us with some feedback. Okay, so traveling in tourism is going to look a little different, as we all know, as we navigate or continue to navigate through COVID-19. Operators will need to evolve with the mandated changes that are coming down the pipeline, as well as customer expectations. How to dial into and execute these expectations will be vital. RTO9 is pleased to partner with Tourism Cafe Canada to share some emerging options and answer questions around specific ideas and issues that you may be having. Nancy, welcome. Nancy Arsenault, I'm going to turn the presentation over to you and let you introduce Leslie.
Great, thanks everybody, and thanks RTO9 for inviting us to join you. We're sitting on the west coast of British Columbia, and my name's Nancy Arsenault. I'm the managing partner of the Tourism Cafe, and it's interesting as we celebrate our 10th anniversary of our company. We thought we knew where we'd be going in the next 10 years, and like many of you, we are now looking with fresh eyes, both at the challenges and opportunities. And I guess one of the things that has been rewarding, given that we've been able to reach across the country with the various operators and destinations that we collaborate with, is really listening, learning, reflecting, and then thinking about where we can take positive action, knowing that each month the world around us kind of changes. And so what we want to do today is focus on value and uncertainty in today's world. And I brought Leslie on, I'll go back here, who is our training and development facilitator, because we work hand in glove on virtually everything we do. And Leslie has been with us for almost 5 years now, formerly with Destination Canada. And the one thing that we know is that we have to work in collaboration with all of our community partners and all of our teams so that we can extend what we're hearing and bring it back in and be more efficient with saying, where do we focus? What tactics do we want to zoom in on right now? With consideration of, does that have value, today's topic, in this uncertain world? Will it build traveler trust and confidence? Two particular angles that we're going to focus on today. And what we'd really love to do that is share examples on how we're doing that. And so much of what you're going to see today is literally hot off the press. We have been gathering examples and ideas in the last 2 to 3 weeks, so that as we move into phase 3 in different parts of Canada, that we're able to share with you what some operators are doing, with the idea that we hope you take away 1 or 2 nuggets that you can say, I can apply that to my business, even though the examples are coming from multiple sectors. And because we know the big COVID variable is there. January, we weren't even having this conversation, and here we are. It is the #1 disease causing death in the world. And we don't know where that's going. And therefore, we are all working and planning into an uncertain future. And yet, we know that we have to continue to move forward. While some of our sectors are on hold or being substantially modified at this point in time, we also know that each one of us in our businesses is taking incremental steps forward. And what we have seen in the past couple of months is that every decision we make is so critical right now, because we only have so much time, money, our audience is reduced, and we may need to evolve it in the future. So we really look at every decision that we're going to make, every experience we're going to trial, every value and pricing decision we're going to make to say, is this just now for a mitigation strategy? What if it has legs and it can actually become a permanent part of our new product line? And what am I going to fundamentally do different going forward? And we have a little bit of examples on all of those with you, with coming at it from the value for the guest, value from your business, and looking at price considerations, because at the end of the day, we all need to generate revenue to get our businesses back and moving. It's kind of funny. In February, I was out in Alberta with AlBEE, and we were speaking about trends, and over-tourism was one of the leading trends for the last 2 or 3 years. Now the language has completely flipped to under-tourism, that we are all now looking at how to bring guests back. But I think the exciting opportunity, and the one we want you to think about today, is how do we do that in a better, more sustainable way as we're doing this slow strategic growth, so that the industry that comes out of this is stronger than the one that we left behind. I love the phrase, never waste a good crisis, and we hear that from our colleagues at Tourism Saskatchewan, and it makes me smile because there is opportunity everywhere, despite the challenges that we're all facing. So what is value? For many, many years at the Tourism Cafe, we have, been teaching value-based tourism, experiential travel, cost price trade-offs. But what we're hearing and seeing and feeling now is looking at value from a different perspective. What is value to your customer today, in 6 months, in a year? As a business, how do you deliver value to a customer that you might just be starting to understand because you've perhaps focused on international markets and now you're focused on a local market? How do we start to understand what that value proposition is? And what we are hearing and seeing in this short-term mitigation to reopening phase is, let's think through the lens of what's value to our company so that we can get our legs going and up and moving, but also what is value to what is perceived value to our customers, so that when you make a decision, you can move forward knowing that weigh scale is actually balanced. It's not just about value. It's not just about price. It is, in fact, about what's going to help your company, what's going to help your traveler, and let's come out of this together.
So for 2020 and potentially into and including 2021, we know that our primary visitors are going to be likely local, hyper-local, and regional. And for some, we know that this may be your existing basis, and for others, you may have to come to a point where you're completely rethinking and attracting a new customer. So you have to start to understand who this customer is. And I know many are familiar with the moniker that the farther away, the more willing to pay. And this suggests that locals are not willing to pay high prices in their own backyard, that they don't necessarily value those experiences in the same way as someone who's from farther away. And that presents us with a challenge. We know that some of these new customers are going to be price sensitive. We recognize that many are unemployed and maybe want to travel, but they don't have the same means that they used to. Others may not be willing to pay for as much for an experience in their own backyard as we've been accustomed to. But there are markets of opportunity that we're seeing as well. We know people want to explore their own backyards locally and regionally, and for many, this is the first time that they've been doing it, and they do have the means and the interest to pay for the right type of offer. So this means that there's a choice for us to make, both in the mindsets of our travelers, but then also for our businesses in terms of those value considerations. So you have a choice. And during this difficult time, you may think, well, I need to discount. That's often an immediate reaction as a way to think about drawing visitors to your business. But discounting is a strategy that can be used to attract customers, but there are a lot of inherent pitfalls in this approach, particularly in the long term as you try to return to the same yield and the rates that you were charging previously. So there's a lot to consider in your value proposition. And we're seeing that there's more to consider relative to value than we've ever seen and had to think about before. We have a quick poll question for you. So, there we go. If you can pop your answer in the box, do you feel like a race to the bottom on price is your only choice at the moment? Can you see the responses, Nance?
Yep, 100% said no.
Awesome. Well, that's great. That's great news because we're here to talk about, we've got some examples, a little bit about some discounting, but we're here to talk about value and other options for that. So we're super excited to hear that results in our poll. So we have a new challenge here, and we're going to be talking a little bit about some discounting pricing options, but also how we're seeing businesses using things like infrastructure and capacity in different ways, how they're amending and changing the products and services that they offer, and creating new ways of engaging visitors with their companies. Just as ideas and thought starters for you if you're businesses or as enablers working together to advise and work with stakeholders within your communities to help them. And what we're seeing is the new challenge is that there are new variables coming into the equation that we haven't necessarily had to put as much focus on. Those variables are things like trust, confidence, safety, cleanliness. How do we communicate all of that in our policies? We know that people have some fears about traveling, about getting sick. They want to know what to expect. They expect companies to be using and adhering to protocols for sanitization and cleanliness. They expect to be communicated. But there are other value considerations as well. People do, we've been missing that human connection. People are looking for togetherness and social time in a safe manner. And there are a number of pricing and affordability considerations. So we're going to move through some examples, and we'll move on to the next slide.
Great. So when we think like a local, our new focus for this summer, and very likely in terms of a domestic market next summer, local means different things to different businesses. Last week, or just on June 30th, the short-term rentals were quoting Airbnb as saying their definition of a local is someone within 300-mile radius. Or 480 kilometers. And it's interesting because back in the days when I did my graduate research, we were looking at local area markets and we called it a one-tank tripper. And there were some characteristics about that one-tank tripper that really came screaming back to me. And it included the ability to go to a place, visit, and come back in the same day. So you weren't committed to accommodations. You maybe could take your food with you, and it allowed you a little bit more of an affordable way to travel, but it also allowed you, as one person said to me, as we were at the dawn of experiential tourism, if I don't like it, I can come back home and get out of there. And the reasons why we might get away are slightly different now, but that was one reason for the one-tank tripper in the local market. The other one is that you had the option to stay overnight for just one night, and you weren't investing too much money to get out and about. And so I find it really quite curious that radius has come back to us. And so one of the questions that we need you to think about as a business, have you thought about what is that local area radius that you're going to define for your business? Because within that, then comes the area to start to focus on who is the customers, what are the locals doing in that area? Who might be some new partners that I've never worked with before that I might be able to work with? And then how do I perhaps address not only adding new value, new experiences, as I go into this summer with the thought of could these things be with us in the fall? The other thing that is has always been important, but is critically important right now, is the generational impact. And for those of you who are traveling, we know that COVID started with the silent generation, and these were the ones that were most impacted. But as each month moves forward, the curve of who's getting impacted by COVID is decreasing. It's showing up more in the youth. And so that not only affects you as an individual traveling and the choices that you're making, it affects your bubble, the circle of people you might be going out with, and how far are people willing to go, how comfortable are they going to be. And so as you start to define your geographical area and say, this is my definition of local, then is the opportunity to look in and say, who is my core generational market that I want to focus on? Because right now, while health, family, security, different employment considerations are out there, that will help you define on where they can move within there. So we need to be laser focused on these things and not try to be all things to all people, in particularly in the summer. So we're going to share a couple of examples, and as we share these are hot off the press examples. We want to state, very openly that we absolutely admire and respect everything everybody's trying to do. Everybody in our industry is doing their best. They're making decisions based on the best knowledge of the day, the week, the month, and then moving is going forward. So as we share these examples with you, you're going to see how businesses are choosing to put anchors in the sand, but also allow themselves the flexibility to move going forward. Now, this is a particular that we wanted to start with discounting because Leslie mentioned that's often our first point of orientation. And in this particular offer, it came out about a week ago into my email box. And what struck me was it was an accommodation. They offered a 10% discount, 30% on food, and they suggested ways for me to enjoy inside the property. So I want to just take a second and ask you, just on what you're seeing there, we'll launch a wee little poll. Does a 10% discount and a 30% on food and beverage inside a single property represent value for you as a traveler? And if we're seeing about 86% are saying no, a couple are undecided, feel free to add into the chat box why. Part of what we want to understand is value means different things to different people, and opportunity is framed differently for every business. There is no right or wrong answer. But what this does is it gives us a sense of how this particular offer has been felt by all of you. Leslie, how about you take the next one?
So just in the chat box, 10% is not enough these days, which, yeah, we're going to show another example coming up. But I think just as a closing to that, there are a number of limits and benefits to discounting, obviously. And like Nancy mentioned, some people are going to find that a great enticement and others aren't. But we want to be careful when we're thinking about discounting because customers can come to expect it. And as we mentioned before, it can be difficult to regain rates, but it can be also an effective strategy to attract people fairly quickly. So moving on to the next example. This one was from Fairmont, and both Nancy and I are Fairmont members, so we get their emails, and I found this one quite enticing. They had a 2-for-1 special. So this was a buy one, get one free. You could either get 2 nights for the price of 1, or if traveling as a family, what I thought was interesting was that they were offering 2 rooms for the price of 1. So you could go for 1 night and have 2 rooms with the kids in 1 room and yourself. It's an offer that extends through till the end of December. And you know, they were pushing the stay close, treat yourself, which I thought was an interesting message because, you know, we've all been through a very difficult time. We know it's stressful, and I personally couldn't normally afford to go and stay at a Fairmont, but I thought, what a nice treat to be able to go for a 2-for-1 as a special. And they also really highlighted their refund in full. So you have to pay the 1 night deposit up front in full, but it's fully cancelable, which we're starting to see a lot of that now in terms of providing value to customers. And they have some touch point messaging. So we talked earlier about the trust and confidence, and in their touch point messaging, they've been using this really interesting graphic, which shows all of the touch points on the visitor journey. And they're highlighting that, you know, all of the touch points that they're focusing on, making it safe for me as a traveler, as well as making it safe for their staff. So it really highlights that message that we're taking care of everybody, not just our customers. Our staff are important to us as well. And it's just a really different way of engaging visitors in a similar message, but quite an interesting graphic to highlight and be able to see, wow, look at all the different points within the hotel environment that they have, that they're actually thinking about cleaning, paying attention to, and just a really non-traditional way to illustrate what they're doing in comparison to the pop-up box, which you will often see on a website or an email where you're saying you have to read through and it says, we're doing all of these things. And so just popping over then to a chat, we'd like to just briefly state, what do you think of Fairmont's touchpoint messaging from a value perspective to you as a traveler? Do you feel that that type of messaging makes you feel safe, confident, and have trust in the organization?
So we're going to pause for just a minute to give you guys a chance to pop your answers either into the chat or the question. There's two spots, I guess. We're seeing feedback coming in. For me, as I looked at it, my first thought was this was a path to purchase messaging, which typically is a B2B tool that we have. But now they've used it to very cleverly profile some of their services with a safety message for staff and guests.
And if you don't want to, if you haven't got any particular thoughts on the touchpoint messaging, you could pop in the chat box also. Have you seen another interesting illustration or example of the way that a tourism business is communicating its cleaning and sanitization and basically customer and staff care processes in the COVID time? So we've got one comment here in the chat box. Love the touch point messaging. Like to see that employees are covered here because oftentimes they're left out. So that's a really important, people, they're not just concerned about themselves. There's a very high awareness, we know now in the marketplace, for a greater social responsibility, that the staff are part of the family, they're part of the company, they're part of the overall experience, and it's really important that we're taking care of our staff as well as our customers. So great point. Thanks for that chat box message. Another chat, take care of your employees and they take care of your guests. Absolutely. So really important as you're thinking, if you're a business or an enabler, one of those things to think about then is as you're looking at your communications around your safety and sanitization protocols, that you're addressing not just your customers, but you're also thinking about what am I saying about my staff and how am I taking care of my staff as well, because your guests want to know. And we know for those who are, have a social responsibility, that responsible travel mindset, it's really important that we address that as well.
It also speaks to harmonizing the guest experience, and when it's harmonized and it's consistent, it builds trust. And we know that building trust with travelers to want to get out, to feel comfortable coming to your establishment is vital. And when the staff experience and interaction is aligned with what guests are being asked to do, it starts to build that consistency and that feeling of safety. So we're going to move on to another example, and this is of the Oak Bay Beach Hotel, which is in Victoria on Vancouver Island. And again, you're seeing perhaps these first ones local for us because we are on Vancouver Island. So we know our businesses are reaching out to us with very specific offers. And this is a third approach in our catchment area, and it's a $75 Visa gift card that you can use anywhere on the property to spend as you like. So they're not directing you to a specific spend. They're leaving it open for you to choose where you want to go. The other aspect that we're noticing is that it's a promo code. So you have to take effort to code it in, and you have to book directly with the property. So they are encouraging that drive directly to their site so that they have the communication with you directly, knowing that they need to converse on an ongoing basis. They've also put a time frame on it. And we know that as we're looking at value and price propositions, many businesses are making strategic decisions on what is needed for now. But the beauty of the internet is that if you have a price advertised, it will come up in somebody's cache 5 years later. And so we're seeing framing. And in this particular case, this offer is good from July 1st to September 30th, where the Fairmont was through till December. So individual businesses can say, what is the time frame I want to make this offer? And they were requiring 48 hours in advance for a booking, and also minimum of 48 hours to cancel with a refund policy. So each one of these three examples has framed and stated what their offer is differently, but all of them have worked, or two of the three have worked with protecting their price and not going for an immediate advertisement on dropping it back. So we're going to pause for another poll here, and I want to just ask you now, when you think about these questions. Oh, no, I got it launched. Okay, so we've got 33% saying yes and most undecided. So this is adding a little bit of more uncertainty than what we saw on the previous one, which means, okay, we're thinking a little bit more about it. We're not sure how it looks and feels at this point. And I think that's, very indicative of where we are at with the travel market at the moment. So let's ask another question. When you look at the three different examples, one gives a 10 to 30% discount inside the property. The other one is promoting a stay, an extra day free with giving you ideas on how to enjoy the outside world. And another one's giving you a shopping credit. They're very different ways to work with that price value proposition. Okay, we're seeing, oh, we just still got a few more people voting. Give it another second or two. Always fascinating, you know, when we put these polls out, we generally don't know where they're going, but we sometimes hypothesize. In this COVID time, we are really understanding and learning together on what these things mean as we move forward, knowing that they might change in the fall. So it looks like we've got almost everybody that's responded, and the answer is 75% have said stay an extra day with the tips on how to enjoy the outdoor community is the one that is the most popular, followed by the rest of the voters saying a $75 shopping credit, and nobody chose the traditional discounting as a way that felt as a value proposition. So something to think about when.
Sorry, I was just going to make a note that there was a chat comment. Could an operator give guests a choice of reward? Absolutely. I mean, that's actually a really great suggestion, because that would have probably great value, because then, you know, we know that personalization creates value for customers, and that's a nice way to personalize what's of value to the specific person. If they, you know, if right now they're a little cash strapped, a discount might be what they're looking for. For someone who's looking, you know, something different, a different reward is going to be the best offer. So thanks for that suggestion. The other thing that I've noted, I guess there's some questions that are coming in through the question and answer box, which unfortunately I'm not seeing them. I would ask, I can read the comments in the chat box. So I think it looks like there's a question and answer box and a chat box. I'd ask that you respond in the chat box if you would. That seems to be bringing the responses through to me. Otherwise, I think Lori can see the question and answer box, and unfortunately there doesn't seem to be anything appearing in that for me. So I apologize if I'm missing comments that are made by the attendees. It's just that I haven't been able to see them. So
Leslie, it's Lori.
Yeah.
I'll read off what a question that came in. Is what about the new Safe Travel Seal from WTTC? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, it's actually, I'll grab that one, Leslie. We're seeing it start to pop up in British Columbia here in the Thompson Okanagan region was the first one that started to work with putting that one out. What I find interesting is it appears to be that they're trying to come up with a universal seal of approval that would get some international traction. In terms of how it's being used, what the opportunity represents for your business, it's too new for me personally to make a comment on it, but it comes across as a traveler as a Better Business Bureau, like a Better Business Bureau certificate. I think what's interesting as we look at hyper-local, we also want to keep our eye on the ball for domestic and then ultimately international travel. So when our international organizations are trying to look at sort of that larger international seal of approval, I would say my personal opinion is if you have international guests as part of your, you know, traditional market and the market that you want to bring back, you want to be paying attention to what those are and see if you can tap in and benefit from perhaps being an early adopter with that, or starting to explore, would that be a value add to your company to align with that?
Terrific. And another comment here, I'm less interested in a discount. Rather, I'd like to know more about value to book and what amazing, unique things that are included.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. And I think our observation, just watching all of the offers that are coming out really in the last 2 weeks, is that some are taking a present and internal about what my business has, so sort of a very, you know, I would say a closed focus. Others are taking a very open focus and saying, here's your, it's more like a hub and spoke. Come to my property, start here. I'm going to take care of you. And these are the places we're recommending in our community. Myself, as an outdoors person, I automatically go to sort of the outdoor appeal one, but I also know I have friends who have been working at home. I don't have children at home right now, so I have friends that have kids at home. They have been working in that very stressed balance. For them, the idea of going to a property, staying tucked in, being closed, and totally chillaxing at this point in time has a huge value proposition. And so what it takes us back to when we're doing our regular product development activities is we are often not our own traveler. So, and even more now, we need to think about those other lenses. And if we don't have it as an individual business, as a small business, reach out and talk to other people, talk to your destination partners. And I know many of them are on this call today because you are going to be seeing and hearing a broader world. And what might not appeal to you might have great appeal. I guess our message is be targeted, be focused. And if it's not working, move on because the world is looking different every month. So on that, I'm going to move on and I'm going to ask you another question. Let's just get the old poll going here. If you look at these three approaches that we've offered just now, from a customer, so think only from your customer lens, which one has the greatest value to would resonate with your customer? A discount, a 2-for-1, or flexible shopping credit? Okay, got a couple more people to vote still. What we know is right now we have to look from 3 lenses. We can't help but look from the lens as a traveler ourselves. We might want to get out, and so our automatic is to look at it from ourselves. We have to look at it from the business. If I do this, will it add value to my business and help move me forward and start to take those steps forward? And most importantly, we have to say, does this make sense from our traveler's perspective? And we're at about 60% votes, so I'm going to close the poll. And what we have is 17% saying a discount on your existing products and services. 33% are saying the 2-for-1, but from a customer's perspective, a flexible shopping credit is taking the lead at 50%. So that is, again, slightly different. There are no right or wrong answers. What we want to demonstrate is there are different ways that are going to have different value. You ultimately always goes back to having to know your customer. So over to you, Les, on customer value.
So I recently went on vacation to Tofino, and I found a lot of value in making a special request to a company. I found a family offer. We wanted to take a surfing lesson, and I found one company that was offering a surfing lesson specifically for a family with kids under the age of 13 at a certain price. In this case, it was about $400. I wanted the amenities and of a different location, which was this Long Beach lodge. They have showers. The showers, unfortunately, at the campground that we were staying at were not open due to COVID. And so I thought a nice hot shower after being in the cold Pacific Ocean would be lovely. So I called them up and I made a special request. And I simply said, you know, I found this one offer. Would you be willing to price match it? And you know, they didn't have it on. It wasn't something that they normally offered. So, and they actually offered to match the price for me. So that was a great value to me because there were specific things that I was looking for from that one property. So that's just another example of how a company is generating value to me as a customer, but I actually had to go and ask for it. So it's a bit of in my opinion, was a bit of a missed opportunity because, you know, families are traveling together. All they had on their website was the normal group lesson, which didn't meet my needs. So, you know, there's a value proposition there for these small groups, which are traveling together in bubbles, whether it's a multi-generational family. In this case, I was taking my niece and my nephew. So thinking a little bit about that, again, that local traveler, because I'm just going across the island and I don't normally do this at this time of year. Are there opportunities to extend the products and services that you have on offer? In this case, I was camping And a lot of the campgrounds, the amenities are closed. So for properties that have some nicer amenities, shower facilities, hot tub we were allowed to use, I was able to gain access for a small price, huge value to me in this particular environment. So there may be some opportunities that you're not necessarily thinking about but looking around at what's the environment, not just within my own property or my own experiences, but what else is out there and what gaps may be existing in this environment that I could fill in with some of my capacity, infrastructure, services, and amenities. And could I put a little package together that might draw people in to spend a little bit of money at my property, because I then bought a shirt, I bought another piece of clothing at their gift shop and so on that I never otherwise would have done. So I ended up spending even $100 more than I would have even just through the package. So that's just another example of looking around at the environment to see what might be possible and how might you respond, and are you empowering your staff to be able to respond to customer requests that come in for special things.
So the other one go ahead.
Go ahead.
We're seeing people use space creatively and spare capacity. And so again, how do you optimize what you have in this restricted time to come up with some really cool ways to add value while protecting your traditional price point, which we ultimately want to get back to? So Les, how about you share this one?
Harbour Air is a seaplane company on the West Coast that offers flights all around to communities. And right now they are flying under limited, obviously, COVID capacity. So they have fewer passengers, meaning that they have more weight availability within their cargo space. So normally they have quite strict luggage limitations. So what they've done is now they have spare capacity and spare weight that they can carry. Recognizing that a lot of people on the West Coast love to golf, they're offering their clubs fly for free this summer. Now, I'm a cyclist. Unfortunately, you can't stick a bicycle into a float plane. But I thought very creative use of their capacity, given that they can carry more heavier equipment with the fewer passengers. The other thing that they normally offer primarily to business clients is these packages of tickets, which come in a 10-pack. And they're looking now, saying they're offering an actual discount for these prepaid tickets. The deal ends to buy them on July the 3rd, but they're usually valid for a fairly long period of time. What a great offer, again, for families who might want to be traveling over, flying over from Comox or Nanaimo into Vancouver to be able to take a family of 4 or 5 people at a discounted price and enjoy the flight on the seaplane, which is really a beautiful way to travel. So it's just a different way of attracting the customers and using the capacity that they have now that COVID is in place.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting from our perspective, because we started with that concept of the race to the bottom, and can you discount your price and get people back? And what we're finding actually is more businesses focusing on value, and then how do you attach a price point to that now or temporarily? But we're also seeing, how do you redesign your offer so that you are adding new value into the marketplace? Because while COVID really started coming down, in February, and it's hitting us hard, and we don't know when or how impactful the second wave will be, both domestic and internationally, guests still want experiences. Our expertise is in experiential tourism. So, we immediately look at our 16 ingredients for, an experience and say, these have to be modified. Some of them might be permanently modified, but how do we, focus on stories and connections and intimacy, personalization, those elements that people still want, while tapping into local markets, knowing maybe you didn't look around your backyard for your typical travel, but you are because of COVID now, and what will get you to come out? And for those that are our outfitters and our canoe operators, I know we're in Southern Ontario, but this one came in, was sent to me by Tourism Saskatchewan a couple of days ago, and it really caught my attention because it's a northern operator. with Churchill River operators. And I'm just going to check my notes because it's literally hot off the press. And like you, everyone was struggling how to attract local, deliver value, but almost all their guided trips had been canceled due to uncertainty of COVID and people thinking twice about where they want to spend their money in this precarious time. Their value proposition is once in a lifetime travel. And so the question they asked themselves was, can we cut 50% or more off our trip and still offer a quintessential trip? So they asked themselves a very focused question. What questions are you asking about your offer? They actually were able to answer yes to their very own question. How could they offer that same amazing trip? Well, they took the flight out. They kept the local activities within a minimal shuttle area so the movement was decreased. They focused on what they know that they do excellent, great paddling experiences. So they came up with 6 different packages for locals, anywhere from just under $1,000 for a 5-day trip up to $1,500 for a 9-day trip. And my first reaction when I looked at the price point was, wow, I would do that. When you add in all of the activities for a single day. They also offered a full refund. Again, a very important aspect of the value proposition up to 7 days before the trip, and a cancellation policy financially. So they started to speak very specifically to things that would be important to me. And yeah, the flight seeing was out, but that's okay. We're not hopping on a plane right now anyway in that area. Les, over to you.
Yeah, this one's an example of a restaurant, and they were it's Canlis, they're in Seattle, and they were a fine dining establishment. The owner realized as soon as COVID hit that the fine dining experience just wasn't the time. And how could they then revamp their offer and change it up to appeal to the current market conditions? His existing customer base was primarily locals, obviously, but he closed his business and then just 3 days reopened and launched 3 completely different concepts within the first week. So he changed from fine dining to drive-through burgers. So we've heard in the news a lot about abundant food supplies in restaurants and they don't really know what to do with it. He took their meat supply and ground it up, which would have normally gone into fine steaks. They ground it up into hamburgers. They created fresh buns and created this drive-through burger place. And he said it was wildly successful. They also launched a bagel bar. So again, creating their own breads and so on. And people were lined up to get bagels in the mornings. And the other thing that they added was then family meal packs that changed daily. And he employed, where he had previously 150 staff, basically employed the staff to be running around doing the actual delivery. So the meal service put its employees, changed them basically from servers to be reservationists, and they would be then taking and driving the meals around the town. So that was, and then they also decided that they wanted to launch a bingo game. And so they do a virtual bingo. They put bingo cards in the takeaway meal packs, and they do a virtual bingo each evening. And they once a week, and they live stream it to their customers. So just a whole new way of engaging their customers, being really creative, and they have been able to keep their 150 people employed throughout the entire COVID just through this creativity and value innovation. So this one, La Stella, is a restaurant that's open right here in Nanaimo, where I live. It's one of my favorite restaurants. And they too, of course, being a restaurant, had to pivot very, very quickly. And what they've done, they were a traditional restaurant. You'd come and dine in. They did a little bit of takeaway, but they created a provisions line. So they've created 3 lines of business now. They've created a provisions line, which is home delivery and pickup of the food, prepared foods. So you can buy fresh pasta prepared, you can buy fresh sauces. And then they started to partner with local farms for eggs, greens, and so on, wine and coffee, so that you could create and make your own meal at home. And that was what they were doing during the COVID time. They then started pop-ups. So they were doing a pizza pop-up and a pasta pop-up. They were doing them once a week. They were really working within their own capacity, and people could come and do a takeaway. Those sold out in less than 30 minutes. And they started to do then also the full meal kits, so that you could take your whole meal, almost, building on that HelloFresh kind of delivery concept. The whole meal kit, you would have some instructions, take it home, make it at home. So now that they're back open again, they've got all of these 3 business lines going. And what I like about it is they're continuing with the provisions, they're continuing with the takeout and open, and they're building the resiliency for the future. And so if there's a second wave coming and they have to close down, they now have these diversified sources of revenue that can continue to carry them through future challenges.
And what we're seeing is people are focusing, as we look at how do we go forward. We really have to step back and say, what is our core capacity? If we could only do one thing in our company right now and do it excellent and use it as a driver going forward, where would we focus? And this next example comes out of Alberta. It's a company called Alberta Food Tours. They started in Calgary, and they've been on a wonderful growth trajectory into Edmonton and Banff over the last several years. And for those that are in the tour operation business, they have a very different challenge, because not only is their company impacted immediately, but their success of their guest experience is tied to all of the partners that they work with in the community. So Karen Anderson, who owns this company, she's got very, very strong networks with her food providers and all the different businesses, but she needed to pivot immediately, knowing that her core tours of 14 guests moving in and around on some, incredible experiential culinary opportunities, it came to a grinding halt. So she focused on what are they really good at. They have excellent storytellers, and they know their community, their customers, and their partners really well. So she launched a Hire a Guide, focusing on those aspects that we know have always been important in tourism: personalization, intimacy, storytelling, focusing on what's important to me as the traveler. So she reframed some of those and created the Hire a Guide using language that the consumer would understand. Group size down to 1 to 6. They will go out one at a time. Personalized storytelling, respecting and advertising the social distancing, not directly offering food themselves at this time, because Karen said it was too hard to make the price point work, but inviting people at the places where they go, and they're taking them to where the social distancing practices are being exampled, and letting them purchase if they want. So the spend is now on the individual to choose to purchase a sampler, purchase a food product, tasting. So she's changed the responsibility from her packaging it to setting the stage for inviting the customer to choose to do that, and a very flexible refund policy. And this allowed her to shift from her traditional tour operations, 14-to-1 ratio, taking people out, to getting out in the community with her staff and storytellers, which is her core asset, and obviously keeping them moving forward with some employment. She's now working on a scavenger hunt, which comes in at a new price point. So it's something that's not competing with her existing services when she goes back to growing her other part of her business post-COVID. And she also is an author. So as she's building a cookbook, and she's putting a chapter out every month, so that she is using that to drive the conversation and keep the food aspect going with her virtual guests. So another different strategy, and I guess to close off a bit of a culinary angle, is heading up into Edmonton. There's a company called Get Cooking, and they had to close, like many businesses, for 3 months. And it was the first time in 10 years, Catherine had ever had to close her business. And so she looked at, how do I serve the local market? How do I add new value? And how soon can I open up? And as many cooking classes do, the price point of the former offer, and the one that will come back in time, was sort of over $100 for a culinary in-class, 10 to 12 person experience. She wanted to go virtual. She wanted to get out into this space, not knowing how long COVID would last. And she made a conscious choice to not compete with the master classes that are exploding and the Gordon Ramsays with big budgets to be able to put on fancy demonstrations. She was trained in experiential tourism. So she said, I want to create a new experience. And she gets guests to sign up for a particular food. She sends them the grocery list. They go in their own time and space to choose the groceries. They come back to their kitchen, and using the interactive Zoom, she then they cook together at a social dimension. And so what she was able to do is cultivate an entirely new market that wouldn't have typically been part of her business. It has been so successful, and she's been working in the $10 to $25 price point. She's now looking at how does she grow that as part of her core business going forward. So there's lots of different ways that we're seeing people try new and different. I guess another one I'll just jump over quickly. I'm just conscious of our time. I'm a golfer. And so when we went out to Crown Isle, which is our local golf course, I was surprised to see the gold tee on the 10th hole turned into an outdoor sort of pub type area. They have reduced the capacity inside their restaurant, so they have taken the gold tee, which doesn't have very many golfers on it, because that's when you have to be really, really good at golf, and they've set up a temporary outdoor patio area. They've put up a small infrastructure. You've got the screens where you can sit and have a beer with your mates. You can watch the golf. It's outdoor, and then when the season's ended, they can literally take it away, and you're back to the traditional gold tee for next summer. So I thought it was really clever because it just gave them incredible extra space. They didn't change the price point of their drinks, and because it created a social environment that was really fitting to me as a golfer, we tipped way higher. So infrastructure leading to customer confidence, feeling valued, that they understand me. The extra revenue came in the form of tips. So we don't necessarily always know how it's going to go forward, but understanding what examples are out there, how might we apply this thinking to our business? And that's why we wanted to give you a variety of different sectors, because let's take those as principles of practice and ask ourselves, could we do that in our business? Or for those of you that are in the destination marketing family and the chamber folks that are on the call, how do you share these ideas with people in your catchment area so that they can have more ideas? And so we want to pause for a moment and ask you again to use the chat box over the question box and share any creative examples that you've seen of businesses that have redesigned what they're doing to attract customers, create a new value proposition. We'll just pause for a little bit and see if you can type some ideas in there.
And just as that's happening, and I hope we get some questions coming in there, ladies. I've made a ton of notes through this presentation. You've just offered some great examples. First and foremost, of course, your issue regarding trust and confidence and the importance of that for travelers. Now more than ever, people want to feel safe in where they're going, but being able to dial in and find out what that looks like for individual travelers. Sometimes, depending on the business you're in, you're able to actually ask. So if you're, let's say, an Airbnb or a B&B, you can certainly have that conversation with people beforehand. What's going to make your stay more comfortable here right now? And you can find out. Other times, maybe it's just talking to people a little bit more, maybe doing polls, who knows? But I think it really comes down to being able to go that step further and find out what's important to them. And people who have been on webinars with me before know that it's always been really important in the businesses that I've been in to really connect and engage with customers directly instead of guessing what's going to be something that they're interested in. Just ask. It's always easier just to ask. We've got a pretty, oh, here we go. Okay, so there is special days, seniors and families. So okay. So just a comment in here, someone put it in the question, special days for self-picking small fruits depending on the type of clients. So members, seniors, and families, so they can feel safe. Well, we're certainly seeing some of that, aren't we, with retail outlets and Shoppers Drug Mart and other pharmacies offering the first hour for seniors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're in an agricultural belt, so as our UPICs start to open, it's arrive at a time, your own row, bring your own chair if you like. I go with my father, and he needs to sit on a chair. So they're really starting to look at how do they invite you back into your world in different ways, and I think that's the really important aspect as we look at adding value. It's changing every month, and our world that we are responding to is opening up. And that's adding new opportunity, it's adding new challenges. And so as we look at understanding our traveler, redesigning our offer, potentially offering something that has a limited time frame so you're not locked in for the long term, you need to be focused on that one or two activity that you're going to do now. But at the same time, you want to keep your eyeball on where you want to be in the fall when the dynamic of kids going back to school. So I'm just conscious of time here now, and I'm noticing that we don't see any other ideas coming at the moment. And so I'm going to move us on. And maybe, Leslie, if you want to summarize a few of the takeaways, and then if there's any final questions, we'll wrap.
Yeah, thank you. So if you define customer experience as some form of gold-plated service for a few high-value customers, then thinking about how do we create value, that's maybe not relevant at this time. We know that we're in a very different time. But if you consider the experience and value as providing consistent, intentional, and differentiated value to your customers in ways that helps improve their lives, helps them learn, helps them engage in new ways with their community, with the people that they're out with, those are the ways that we can start to think about how to create value for our customers. It's going to be a little bit different during this time, and it is going to be different for each customer, for each business. So there is no one right answer for anybody. What we hope we've provided today was some illustrative examples that can help to spark new ideas for your own business that you can take away. But we know that discounting is a race to the bottom, and it's not the only choice. We recognize that revenue is key at this point in time, and we recognize that discounting is a strategy that may be able to, achieve a certain goal that is needed right now. So it is one of the options, but it's not the only choice, and that was one of the things that we just wanted to get across today. We want you to think strategically about the impacts of your decisions. Our instinct is, oh, I've got to survive right here, right now, which is absolutely critical because obviously you have to be open in the longer term. But also thinking then about that longer term impact of the decisions and going through the different options, exploring what might work in the short and the long term. And hopefully you might land on something that will become a new revenue generating line of business and attract new customers into your business over the long term, just like the Get Cooking School has been able to do. So are there some ideas which might have some legs for you? And that crisis provides you the opportunity and sort of that stimulus for moving forwards with the ideas. Thinking about the value balance for both your guests and your business. Value perception is going to differ for local and regional customers compared to what you might be used to. Work to understand what is of value to your local market. And we were just talking about a few strategies like polling or surveying to try to understand what would be considered of value to that more local and regional market. And then considering what is that value for your own business, for your brand, for your reputation, and for your future. Thinking about how you might amend your experience in response to the new market realities, but focus on retaining the experiential value. We've taught experiential travel for a long time, and we know that COVID's changed the situation that we're in, but it hasn't changed that fundamental desire to have a great experience. What value is, or what locals are going to want to do may differ from the typical customers that you've seen who come from a little bit farther away. But they still want to engage, they still want to learn, they still want something that's going to be differentiated and unique. So you might need to just amend or tweak your offer a little bit, but continue to focus on what is the value, the core value of that experience, like Churchill Canoe Outfitters did, and how might you pull out some of the more expensive pieces that you can pull it to a price point which is amenable to a closer in audience, but still deliver on the core experience. Exploring the creation of new value through partnerships. And we illustrated a couple of examples like La Stella, the Canless. They have looked for businesses that they can partner with who have like-minded values from business to business, and they're operating in similar types of with similar types of principles. Be creative together, see what you can do together to support each other, because I certainly know for myself, I've valued the businesses that are partnering locally where I can access multiple things from one person and recognize that I'm supporting a variety of businesses within my community just by going and purchasing from one of them. So that's, people want to support local. Look for the relevant inspiration for your business to spark new ideas. Not everything that you heard today may resonate. There might be just one or two things. What's relevant for you? What can you take away? And what can really spark ideas for yourself? And there is no playbook. So if you try something once, it may or may not work. Try something different. You just have to keep at it because there's no rules to the game. We don't know where it's going, and we know that the situation is changing from week to week. We hope that today you've gotten a few ideas and inspirations that provide you with some thought starters going forwards. And we just want to ask one final question about whether you'd be interested in participating in a small group follow-up, more intimate discussion with other operators and DMOs on this type of topic.
Well, thanks, Les, and our thanks to Bonnie and Laurie and RTO9 for inviting us to join you today. We want you to stay safe, stay healthy, be kind, and we wish you all the best as you move forward. So we'll just leave this poll open for a couple of minutes to see if people would like to gather together, and then we'll follow up with Laurie. So on behalf of Leslie and myself at the Tourism Cafe, all the best of luck, and we look forward to seeing you in person sometime in the future.
Excellent.
Laurie.
Thanks so much, ladies. I really appreciate you jumping on today. Really enjoyed seeing some of the creativity that is throughout Canada, primarily in the West, but I'm sure there is equal in the East and certainly here in Ontario. The biggest takeaway for me is just being flexible, just kind of rolling with what's going on right now and doing your best to target your guests and think about where the gaps are and thinking how you can fill them, working with partners to fill them. There really are quite a wealth of ideas out there for people to latch on to. And sometimes you'll hear or see something and think, oh, that would be really cool, but I can't do it with my business. And the reality is that maybe not that exactly, but you might be able to tweak it just a little bit and have it apply. So just be as creative as possible. RTO9, again, as well as I'm sure DMOs, I'll speak on your behalf for those that are present. We're here to help our operators. So if someone is stuck, if someone needs a connection, if someone needs an idea, they need help putting something together, that's what we're there for. We're here to help people be successful, particularly in times like we're going through right now. So I love seeing some of these initiatives, and with some of the partners that I have spoken with to date, some of them are going to stick around. I would dare say quite a few of them are going to stick around because there's more than one way to do business, and people are realizing that now. So I appreciate, again, you taking the time, both of you. I know it's a few hours earlier your time, but we've appreciated having your insight and input. And Nancy and Leslie, I look forward to working with you in the future. Thanks again.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Have a great day, everyone.